Hello and welcome everyone to another episode of Scott Schilling Speaks. I'm your host, Scott Schilling, and we're going to have some fun here today because my guest is a former NFL player, had an outstanding college career. In fact, he broke a bunch of Marshall Faulk's records. I mean, he's a player and just a good dude. So, George, thanks for joining me here on Scott Schilling Speaks.
Oh, I'm glad to be with you, Scott.
So let's get into a little bit of your career. You played in the NFL.
Yes,
You had an amazing college career at San Diego State.
yes,
And now you're a stay-at-home father of three boys, age
yes,
14, 12, and 9.
yes.
What made you decide to want to be a full-time dad?
Well, growing up, I didn't have the pleasure or the opportunity to have a dad. My dad was dead. He passed away right after I was born. So I have no recollection of what he looks like. I've never seen a picture of him. I'm 48 years old and I've never seen what my dad looks like. So for me, growing up and seeing my friends and teammates on football teams have their fathers at practice, at the schools, I always wanted that, but I never had the opportunity to have that. And I never got to say those three words most of my life, DAD, dad. I never got to say that. So once I got the opportunity to be a father myself, I knew early on that I was going to use football to help me with the position myself to be a dad, to be at home full time. So that's why I take this very seriously in being a dad.
That's awesome. I know you started an organization called The Present Dad. What do you hope to achieve through that organization?
Well, I hope to reach as many fathers as possible. There are probably guys out there like me that think they're doing a good job as a father and probably want more guidance. I did that. I didn't think I was doing a good enough job as a father. So I started to reach out to other people who I thought and who I perceived as being great fathers for advice to help me to be a better father.
Yeah, that's awesome. I know when my kids were born, um, I remember holding my son one day, and my wife said, "That's not the way you hold a baby." And I said, and she looked at me and said, "Don't you know how to do that?" And I said, "No, where would I learn this?"
Yeah.
Right. So
Yes.
I can relate.
Yeah, there's no playbook for being a father. A lot of it is on the job training and trial and errors as you go along. I can remember my first son, GJ, he's 14 years old, and being at home with him for 14, 15, 16 hours a day. And I thought that was really hard at the beginning. And now you're talking about 14 years later, I have three boys. And managing one son is way easier than managing three. So when you first get into fatherhood, it could be kind of overwhelming. But for me, wanting to do that, I took the challenge head on and I wanted to approach it just like I approach football with the training and all that. I put the same amount of time that I did in being a dad, even more time than when I played football.
So I think it's such a great message that you're sharing with, you know, the present dad, being there. I think that there's so much that can be shared if you know how to share it and what to do with it all. Like I said, I remember saying, well, there's no books written on this stuff. And back in those days, because I am old,
Hmm.
there didn't seem to be, from that side. So given that you didn't grow up with a father, who influenced you as a father?
Well, I would say two people that comes to mind. In 1987, I was in the seventh grade and I befriended a guy by the name of Nathan Broom. And he invited me to come over to his house for dinner. Now, mind you, at that time, I had never been around whites or over a white person's house ever in my life. So I went over there and I met his whole family, his mother, Jackie, his dad, Monty, and his sister, Leah, during that time. And his dad, Monty, from day one treated me like I was his own blood son. So I just always just sat back and watched everything that he did as a father and as a husband, and how he was very nurturing to Nate and Leah, and how he took the time to help them with schoolwork, sports, or just do whatever. And so as I was looking at that, I was like, when I get my opportunity to be a dad, that's what I want to do. So he was the first, and then most current will be Archie Manning. So
Wow.
yeah, it's kind of crazy because some years back, I don't know if you ever heard of the Book of Manning. Have you ever seen that?
I have, yeah.
Yeah, so I was scrolling through the TV one night, and I turned on and I saw that. And we love the Manning family, my whole household. My son Cooper, my youngest son, is named after Cooper Manning, the oldest son of the Mannings.
Very cool.
Yeah, so I looked at the whole show, and I started getting all these like feelings, like strange feelings in my body. And I bawled through most of it. I started crying. So I said, you know what? Maybe I'm just not feeling good today. I'm going to do it tomorrow. I'm going to watch it again tomorrow. The same thing happened. I knew, Scott, in my mind, I wasn't doing a good enough job with especially my oldest son, GJ. I didn't feel like I was fitting the bill as a good father to him. So I reached out to Archie, and I asked him, can I talk to you about how you were father to Cooper, Peyton, and Eli? We played phone tag back and forth for about a week, and then we nailed down a time where he called me, and I was on the phone with him for like 3 hours, like 3 full hours, and I was just full transparent in everything that I was doing and telling him what I was doing. And he gave me some point by point guidance on how he would do things, how he did things differently with his 3 sons. And so I took that to heart, and I started implementing them into how I fathered my boys. And it was just a dramatic change on when I did that. Me and my oldest son, Gigi, our relationship went from like 1 to 1,000, because I was one of those dads, again, Scott, like we said, there's no playbook.
Right.
So yeah, there's no playbook. So I was one of those dads. I always coach my son. So even if I wasn't coaching my son, I'm on the in the stands, I was still coaching him while he was playing sports. And then when he got into the car, my first thing would be, why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? And when I spoke to Archie, he gave me some other tools on how to better approach GJ after a sporting event, whether he did good or bad. And so when I implemented what he shared with me and taught me, it was just light years. And now my relationship with my son GJ is like I said, it's like light years better. And now we're like pretty much joined at the hip now, like with pretty much everything that we do. And watching the Book of Manny, I wanted that relationship, how Archie had with Cooper, Peyton, and Eli. I wanted that same relationship with my boys. And so I knew modeling everything after Archie was a good thing, because I had met Cooper Manny June 5th at a football camp at Clemson in Greenville, South Carolina. So I walked up to him, introduced myself, and told him how much his dad has helped me and meant to me. Cooper don't know me from Adam, and he treated me with the utmost respect, stayed there and listened to everything I said. His son Arch, who was there at the camp, took time to talk to my 2 boys, GJ and Cooper. And so when I left that camp, I reached out to Archie to ask him, can you put me in contact with Cooper, your son Cooper? He did that. Cooper called me. We've been good friends ever since. And anytime, the reason why I wanted to talk to Cooper, even though me and Cooper is about the same age, but he's gone through things in life with his son. His son is older than my son. And I wanted to pick his brain about recruiting. How should I go about the recruiting with my son, GJ? How do I go hard? Do I push back? And he gave me, again, all the tools to do that. And I knew I was doing a good job by modeling after Archie because he had done a good job with Cooper, and Cooper opened his arms to me and helping me whenever I needed. So I knew I was doing the right thing by reaching out to Archie. It has come full circle, and those are the two guys, Archie and Monty Broom, on who are the biggest influence in my life as a father.
Well, I think it's, your story is awesome. And the desire that you have to be the best dad you can possibly be and reach out for those resources. But I want to go back a little bit into when we first talked, and you talked about being in Greenville, South Carolina, and your first father, in meeting him. And to this day, I just remember you saying, I met somebody who didn't look like me.
Yeah, so it was funny because growing up back there in Greenville and back in the South, race relations were a little tough back then. So I was very, like I said, very reluctant to go over to their house because, again, I never have been around white people like that. So when I went over to his house, I mean, it was just like Monty must have seen something in me, Scott, that here's a kid, a teenager. He knew that I needed help just with not just, football, but just being a teenager. And so he opened his arms. That was the first time the following year going into the 8th grade, him and his son asked me to play for the Eastside Dolphins, which is a mixed league where it was white and black players playing together. I never played with any white players before up to that point. So he convinced me to do it. And I told him, I said, Money, I can't afford this. I don't have money to pay for this. Don't worry about it, George. You just come and play, and me and Jackie will take care of everything. So again, from day one up to me at 48 years old, I can just text him, FaceTime him, and he will talk to me and give me advice. I can give you a prime example, Scott. Probably about 4 years ago, they wanted to do an interview with me about football in that San Diego State. I was like, nah, I really don't want to do it. So I said, you know what? Let me call Monty. I'm gonna ask Monty what I should do. So I FaceTimed him, and he gave me the pros and the cons. He said, George, it might be a kid out there like you that's growing up like you that might want to hear your story. So I think it will be a good idea to do the interview, but at the end of the day, it's your decision to make. That's all he needed to tell me. And I did the interview, and it was a good thing that I did the interview because it reached a lot of people. And again, him giving me that wisdom and advice has carried on to the day.
Well, that's why I think it's so important. And again, a big part of Scott Schilling Speaks, the show here, is being able to bring your voice to life, give you the opportunity. And I know when we first talked, I was tremendously impressed with that story. And obviously you grew up in a different situation than I did, but it so impresses me how you handled that situation. And not a value judgment here, but seemingly so much better than so many others growing up in your situation.
Yes, I think, growing up like that, it made me tougher. It made me want to have a better life. That I can assure you that was part of it. But the father part, I mean, I've told my own kids, if I would have had a father, he was a good man and did right by me, I probably would have worshiped the ground he walked it on. Because I think most young kids, especially boys, they want their father in their life. They want their father, their father's approval, their father telling them that they're doing a good job, their father saying, I love you, I'm going to be there for you, and all that. I wanted that, but I never really got the opportunity to get that until I really met Monty in 1987. But for those first 13 years, I didn't get that. But I wouldn't change. Like, people ask me all the time, would I change my life and all that? I always say no, because I don't think I will be the father that I am if I changed anything in my past, because my past has made me want to do and be the best possible father that I can be. And people tell me all the time, George, I know playing in the NFL is the greatest thing for you. How was it? And and I would say it was cool and it was a great experience. I tell people all the time the greatest accomplishment that I've ever done was help create my three boys by far. That is the greatest accomplishment I've ever done. And playing football was cool, but being a father is 1,000% better because now I can leave a legacy with my three boys that can carry on to when they have their own kids. And that's the what I'm hoping for, that I teach them the right way. And when they have their own kids, I'm there to help and assist my sons in raising their kids when my son need advice coming from their dad.
Well, again, I think that's tremendously admirable. I think that um, you're making such a conscious effort, which on one side shouldn't be effort at all. But in today's society, it certainly is that. So again, I applaud you for that. And I think it's really important that we get back to that family leadership, of which you're doing on such a great way. I mean, I think it's really cool. And to think about something new to me in this interview is we didn't talk about Archie Manning and the Manning, but I think he probably did a pretty good job if you look at Cooper and Peyton and Eli. So again, just some really valuable tidbits for people to take. So what do you think is really critical for fathers to know today? I mean, we're in a tough time right now.
Yes, I think the most critical thing for fathers of today is to, just like the book, to be a present dad. Just like I know, Scott, most men are like providers. They're protectors. So they provide for their family, they protect their family, but they're not nurturers of the kids. That's usually left to the mother.
Right.
So I think now in today's society, more fathers should be nurturers as well, because the sons need that. And I'm not saying there's nothing wrong with being a provider and having a roof over their head and food in their stomach and paying for college and all of that, but the little life lessons that are needed, because I can go back to my own self. When I was a teenager, I had to go through all these emotions as a teenager with my hormones raging and not knowing what that feeling is. I had nobody to talk to. So I had to go through trial and error with all that by myself. Now my kids, when they start to go through that and they ask me, I can sit here and help them and tell them, yeah, I've gone through that. This is how you manage this. This is how you treat a girl when you start dating. This is how you do X, Y, Z. I didn't have that from anybody to help me with that. So I think it is critical for dads to not only be providers, but to nurture the kids as well. And a lot of men, in my opinion, don't ask for help about being a father.
Right.
An ego thing. Nobody wants to say, I'm not doing a good job as a father. I think, telling people that you need help and being humble and have humility about it is greater than having an ego. Because me reaching out to like people like Archie, I had to humble myself and admit that I wasn't doing well and tell Archie, can you help me? And sometimes people may help, sometimes they may not help. If they don't help, at least you gave an effort to ask and try. Most people don't want to do that these days because they don't want to feel like they don't want to be vulnerable and let people know that they're vulnerable in that way, especially as men.
Again, I think a very valuable lesson there, the vulnerability of asking. And I look back at my kids who are now been out of the house forever, out on their own and doing amazing things. Boy, the ripple effect that you can have by just doing some of the things right. And if you could learn to do more of the things right, how much more powerful that would be in the growth of your kids.
Oh yes, for sure. And I'm not and I don't want anybody, the viewers, to get me wrong. I don't mean that you put your life on, hold and say, all I'm going to do is be a dad. I'm not saying that everybody is not built to do that, but you can give more effort and time putting in with your kids, because just going up, I could just give example. If your kids are young kids in elementary school, just take one day out of the week or the month to go up and have lunch with your son or daughter, or go out to recess with them when they're in school, or say, you know what, on this weekend, we'll go to putt putt and do some golfing or something like that. Just taking a little time like that and learning how your kid is and observing the ways that they interact with others will help you to better parent them. When you're always busy on the go and working, again, I know everybody has to work, but you have to carve some type of time out to be able to, be there for your kids. Because I remember in the Booker Manning, Peyton Cooper, Peyton and Cooper, I can remember this like it was yesterday. They said, I knew my dad was going to always be there. He was going to always be there, which he was. And I'm trying to do that same thing with my boys. I want my boys through their whole life, and when they have their own kids, that they say, my dad was always there for me, no matter what. If it was school functioning, football, training, whatever it may be, my dad was always there. And I think if more people took that approach, we can kind of bend the curve on these fatherless homes.
Well, definitely a tremendous goal to accomplish that. I mean, without leadership, without vision, the people perish. And if dad isn't there, again, it's hard. My very blessed that my mom and dad were married 54 years, I believe, when my dad finally passed. And my father-in-law passed the beginning of this month, and my wife's parents were married 70 years.
Nice.
Uh, when he finally passed. So the being able to add input to the situation, um, heck, even if you're working at it, it's not easy, is it?
No, it's not easy at all. I mean, with just a job, the relationship with your wife, all the outside stuff that's got your attention, it is hard being a parent. But the same amount of time that you put into like golf, hunting, hanging out with buddies, you can put some of that time in to be a better father, or give your kids more time, more of your time to be their father. Because I'm telling you, Scott, if dads put in that time at a very young age, those kids will never forget it, because they will remember if you don't put the time in when they become adults. And they will tell you when they're adult that, why are you coming into my life now trying to tell me what to do or XYZ when you wasn't there when I was young? And
Yeah.
nobody wants to hear that.
No, absolutely. So you're writing a book on all this, and what's the title of the book?
The present dad.
So it's the same as the organization. That's
Yes.
awesome.
Yes.
So how do you approach the book? Are you, um, you know, just telling stories of your life, and or calling out specific ideas on how to help dads along the way, or a combination of all of it?
A combination of all. And I'm going to look to interview dads that I think are very good dads, and ask them questions on how they did a good job of being a dad. So I'm going to have a little of that in there as well. Some of my friends that I perceive to be great dads, I'm going to interview them and question them on what they did up to that point that made them a good dad, and why did you put all that time in, and what was your reasoning behind it.
I'm sure you've had some of those conversations up to this point. Anything that has really surprised you as a great tip or technique?
Well, I would say the time, because look at it like this, Scott. I think anything in life, if you want to be great and very successful at it, it takes a lot of effort and a lot of time. I don't think a person can do a lot of things and be successful with a lot of things. like a CEO that runs a company. He's at work all the time, getting there early, staying late. What is he losing? He's probably losing time with his family,
Yep.
time with his spouse. So at the end of the day, as fathers, we have to make decisions. Do we want to be great at our job? Do we want to be great in the marriage? Do we want to be great as a father? You can't be great in all three. It's impossible because there's not enough time in the day to be able to do that. So it comes to a point to where you're going to have to make a decision on what you're going to have to do. Like for me, I have to give up time for myself in order to give all this time to my kids. And I was willing to do that 14 years ago, because before my oldest son, GJ, was born, I used to hang out with all my friends. I used to be in the bowling league. I used to play a ton of flag football like 4 days a week. The day my son was born, I cut all of that out. And I said, all this time is going into as a father. Do you miss out with hanging out and all that? Yeah, you do. But over time, all that disappears and you're just focused on being the best possible father you can. Some people, Scott, may not want to say, I want to give up my personal life. And that's fine. But I think if you want to be the best possible father, something's going to have to give, because you can't have everything and be able to be a great father, a great worker, something has to give.
I think that's, a great tidbit right there. I think everybody is trying to get the day stretcher,
Mhm.
make the day longer, be able to do so many different things. So the book is scheduled to come out in June. How do
Father's
people,
Day.
what's that?
On Father's Day.
On Father's Day. Very
Yes,
nice.
yes.
Great way to do it. How do people get involved in the book or working with you, or just, learning more about some of the things that you're sharing here?
Well, they can go to my website at www.thepresentdad.com. And we're going to, me and my team is going to be putting things on social media in the coming weeks about how people could get involved. And again, I'm doing all this because I was once one of those fathers who was lost and needed guidance and needed help. And all I'm trying to do is what guys like Monty Broom and Archie Manning and Cooper Manning did for me. I'm trying to pass it along to others, because I think the greatest thing that anybody could do is give back when something is given to them. And so that's what I'm trying to do.
Well, again, tremendously admirable. I love the fact, and I just realized that with those three mentors, it's kind of the pay it forward. You looked at three, and so now if you can touch three more and touch three more and do things like that, uh, yeah, I would encourage everybody, go to the Present Dad and make sure you pick up the book when it becomes available. Can they pre-order now, or not quite yet?
And not quite yet.
Okay. Well, we need to get them on a mailing list and make sure that that we turn the printing presses a lot early,
Yes,
you
I
know,
agree.
and get some things. Really appreciate your time here. We got just a couple minutes. What last word of wisdom would you want to share with everybody today?
I would just say to everybody that's listening, whether you're male or female, time, being in the present, just give time to your kids whenever you can. They're only young once. So you don't want to be one of those parents that say, when your kids are older, I wish I could have done this. I wish I did that. You can do it now. Just prioritize the time to be a better parent, and we all could do this together.
Yeah, I think amazing, amazing wisdom there. The reality is, once the time is gone, it's the one perishable that we can never get back. And especially, we're going through some really unique times right now, and in that fatherly guidance can do a whole lot to serve a whole lot of people.
Yes.
George, I really appreciate you coming on the show here today, and we'll have to do more of it. We'll have you back on and talk some more after the book is out, to really encourage people to take advantage of the wisdom that you've learned over and you've created yourself, raising three boys.
I look forward to it, Scott. I appreciate you having me on today.
Thanks for being with us. always reach out to scottschillingspeaks.com. You can see not only this episode, but many more. We're always looking for sponsors that want to, in fact, support these good messages going out, because quite frankly, our kids are our futures. There's no doubt about that. I know the minute I met George, that infectious smile and everything he's got going, we had to get this message out and keep it going. So again, Scott at scottschillingspeaks.com. If you want to make any comments, go to the website, watch it again. And thanks for being here. We'll see you again real soon. God bless.